Deep in the basement of the Xenolinguistics department at MIT, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the pulsing symbols floating above her desk, their soft blue glow casting strange shadows across her face. The alien transmission had been repeating for 3 months now, ever since the mysterious object entered our solar system and parked itself in high Earth orbit. 17 minutes and 42 seconds. That was the exact length of the message before it looped again, like some cosmic broken record. The pattern has to mean something, she whispered to herself, her tired eyes tracking the dancing symbols. As the world's leading expert in theoretical xenolinguistics, Sarah had spent the last decade preparing for this moment, but now that first contact had actually arrived, she felt woefully unprepared. The aliens, whoever they were, hadn't responded to any of Earth's attempts at communication. They just kept broadcasting their loop of indecipherable symbols. The holographic display shifted, starting its 18,740th second repetition since arrival. Sarah had watched it so many times she could predict each symbol's appearance down to the millisecond. Her colleagues had already given up, declaring it impossible to decode without some form of reference point. But Sarah knew better. She'd seen something in the pattern that nobody else had noticed, a hidden structure that seemed almost familiar. "Tell me your secrets," she murmured, reaching out to touch one of the floating symbols. Her finger passed through the hologram, distorting it slightly. The symbol looked almost like a twisted version of the Chinese character for speak, but that had to be her mind playing tricks, trying to find patterns where none existed. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd seen these symbols somewhere before. Sarah's computer chimed, interrupting her thoughts. Another message from the Joint Chiefs demanding progress. The world's governments were getting nervous, their military leaders pushing for more aggressive approaches to the alien visitor. So far, cooler heads had prevailed, but Sarah knew her time was running out. If she couldn't crack this code soon, someone else might decide to try communicating with missiles instead of mathematics. She reached for her coffee cup, finding it empty for the 3rd time that night. As she stood to refill it, something about the reflection of the symbols in the empty cup caught her attention. She froze, her tired mind suddenly racing. The symbols in the reflection, they weren't just random shapes, they were 3-dimensional, she breathed, her heart beginning to pound. "Computer, display transmission in full volumetric mode, now." The hologram expanded, the symbols spreading out into 3-dimensional space. Sarah's hands trembled as she stepped into the cloud of floating characters. She'd been looking at them wrong this entire time, treating them like a linear message when they were actually— "It's a conversation," she gasped. "The whole thing is a single conversation, but in 3 dimensions." Working frantically, she began mapping the symbols in 3-dimensional space, tracking their relationships to each other. What had looked like random noise in 2 dimensions suddenly revealed itself as an intricate dance of meaning. The aliens weren't just broadcasting a message, they were teaching us how to speak their language. Hours passed as Sarah worked, her fingers flying across her holographic interface. Each symbol carried multiple meanings depending on its position in space, its rotation, even its relationship to other symbols. It was the most elegant system of communication she'd ever encountered, a language that existed in 4 dimensions. As the sun began to rise outside her windowless office, Sarah finally sat back, her mind reeling from what she'd discovered. The message wasn't just a greeting or a warning. It was an entire linguistic primer, a crash course in alien communication. And now that she understood the basics, she could finally respond. Her hands shook as she accessed the transmission system that had been set up for just this purpose. Using the computer's holographic interface, she carefully constructed her first message in the alien language, a simple 3-dimensional pattern that meant, she hoped, "We understand, we wish to speak." For 5 long minutes, nothing happened. The alien object maintained its silent orbit, broadcasting the same loop it had been sending for months. Sarah held her breath, wondering if she'd made some terrible mistake in her translations. Then, suddenly, the loop stopped. A new pattern of symbols bloomed in the air above her desk, complex and beautiful. As Sarah began to decode it, tears formed in her eyes. "Hello, teacher," the message read. We have waited long for one who could see the depth of meaning. Are you ready to learn? Sarah's fingers flew across her interface, sending back a response. Yes, she transmitted, adding the symbol for eagerness, letting it rotate in a way that expressed both excitement and respect. The alien response came faster this time, symbols flowing like water through the air. All students have questions. All teachers must provide answers. This is the way of understanding. A pause, then more symbols appeared. But first, teacher, who is now student, what shall we call you? Sarah hesitated, then carefully constructed her name in their four-dimensional language. The aliens seemed to consider this for a moment before responding with what appeared to be approval. Their next message carried a weight of formality that made Sarah sit up straighter in her chair. Sarah Chen of Earth, the message began. You have proven yourself worthy of the knowledge we carry. We are the Librarians, and we have come to share the greatest collection of wisdom in 27 galaxies. But we must warn you, knowledge once given cannot be unknown. Do you wish to proceed? Sarah's mind raced with the implications. The greatest collection of wisdom in 27 galaxies, just waiting to be accessed. She thought about all the problems humanity was facing, all the questions we'd been struggling to answer. This could change everything, or destroy everything. The weight of this moment pressed down on her like a physical force. I wish to proceed, she transmitted, adding the symbols for determination and responsibility. But I must know, why choose Earth? Why now? The response came with an elegance that suggested amusement. All species ask this question when we find them. The answer is both simple and complex. We did not choose you. You chose us. Sarah frowned, carefully constructing her next message. I don't understand. We didn't know you existed until you entered our solar system. Your mathematics called to us, the Librarians responded. Your physics sang across the void. But most importantly, your stories reached us. We have been watching, listening, learning. Your species imagines magnificent things, then works to make them real. This is rare, precious. We knew you were ready when your fiction began accurately predicting your future. The implications of that statement made Sarah's head spin. They'd been monitoring us through our broadcasts, our literature, our scientific papers. Every human achievement had been a signal fire in the dark, drawing their attention. How many other species have you contacted? Sarah asked, her fingers trembling as she formed the symbols. You are the 742nd species to pass the threshold of understanding, came the reply. Each brings their own wisdom to add to the library. Each takes what they need from our collection. But we must ask, what does humanity seek most? What knowledge would you have first? Sarah had prepared for many first contact scenarios, had imagined this moment countless times. But now, faced with the actual choice, she found herself hesitating. What did humanity need most? Clean energy? Medical breakthroughs? The secret to faster-than-light travel? Before I answer, she transmitted, I need to understand something. These 741 other species, are they all still thriving? Did the knowledge you shared help them? There was a longer pause before the next response came. An intelligent question. The truth is complex. Of the species we have contacted, 612 still exist. The others, the symbols shifted in a way that suggested regret, were not ready for what they learned, despite passing our initial tests. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What happened to them? Some destroyed themselves with knowledge they were not prepared to handle. Others lost their purpose once certain mysteries were solved. A few simply stopped advancing, content with what they had learned. The path of knowledge is not without risk, Sarah Chen of Earth. This is why we ask what you seek most. The answer reveals much about a species' readiness. Sarah thought about Earth's history, about how technological advances had both saved and endangered us. She thought about the questions that had driven human progress, the mysteries that kept us reaching for the stars. What humanity seeks most, she transmitted carefully, is understanding, not just of the universe, but of ourselves. Each answer we find leads to more questions. We don't want just knowledge, we want the wisdom to use it well. The symbols that appeared in response seemed to shimmer with approval. In 742 first contacts, only 8 species have given an answer similar to yours. They are among our greatest success stories. But now we must ask, are you prepared to begin? Once started, this exchange cannot be undone. Sarah glanced at her computer screen, where urgent messages from government officials around the world were piling up. They would want to take control of this conversation, to filter all communication through committees and bureaucrats. But she understood now why the librarians had waited for someone to crack their code independently. This wasn't about politics or power. It was about the pure pursuit of understanding. "I am prepared," she transmitted, "but I have one more question. Will humanity be allowed to share what we learn with future generations?" "Ah," the response came quickly. "Another excellent question. The answer is yes, but with a condition. Knowledge must be earned, not given. You may guide others to understanding, but they must make the final connections themselves, just as you did with our initial message. This is the way wisdom truly takes root." Sarah nodded, though she knew they couldn't see the gesture. It made sense, the same way you couldn't truly learn mathematics just by memorizing answers. Understanding came from working through the problems yourself. "Then I am ready to begin," she transmitted. "Where do we start?" The response that bloomed in the air before her was more complex than any previous message, a stunning array of interconnected symbols that rotated and flowed through 4-dimensional space. As Sarah began to decode it, her eyes widened in amazement. "We begin," the message read, "with the true history of the universe. But be warned, Sarah Chen of Earth, what you are about to learn will change your understanding of everything. Are you certain you wish to continue?" Sarah's fingers moved across her interface without hesitation. "Yes," she transmitted, adding the symbols for both courage and curiosity. "Show me." The symbols that appeared next would change the course of human history forever, beginning a journey that would either elevate humanity to new heights or join us with those 129 lost civilizations. The next few hours would determine which path we would take. As Sarah began to decode the first lesson from the librarians, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. All those years of science fiction stories about first contact with aliens, and in the end, it wasn't our weapons or our technology that caught their attention. It was our imagination, our stories, our endless quest to understand the unknown. The symbols continued to flow, and Sarah Chen, the first human to truly communicate with an alien species, began her role as humanity's student, ready to learn secrets that would either enlighten or destroy us. The real question was, which would we choose? The first revelation from the librarians struck Sarah like a physical blow. The symbols flowing through her office weren't just conveying information, they were reshaping her understanding of reality itself. "Your species calls it the Big Bang," the librarians explained through their elegant 4-dimensional script. But it wasn't the beginning. It was merely the latest iteration. Sarah's hands trembled as she formed her response. "Latest iteration? You mean the universe has existed before?" "Many times," came the answer. "What you perceive as the beginning was actually a reset, a cosmic reboot initiated by the beings you might call the first ones. They exist outside what you understand as time." As Sarah processed this information, a new set of symbols appeared, showing her images that her mind could barely comprehend. The universe wasn't just expanding, it was following a pattern, a design so vast and complex that it made her previous understanding seem like a child's drawing. "But why?" she asked, her mind reeling. "Why reset the universe?" The answer came in layers of meaning that took her several minutes to fully decode. "Imagine your computer systems," the librarians explained. "Sometimes, when they become corrupted or overloaded, a reset is necessary. The universe operates on similar principles, though at a scale your mathematics has only begun to grasp." Sarah took a sip of her now cold coffee, trying to steady her thoughts. "Are you saying the universe is some kind of computer?" "Not exactly." The symbols shifted to show new patterns. "But that analogy helps explain concepts your language cannot yet express. What matters is understanding that everything you know, everything you are, exists within a grand design. The question is, what will humanity do with this knowledge?" Before Sarah could respond, her office door burst open. Director Matthews from the National Security Agency strode in, followed by a team of serious-looking officials. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice tight with controlled urgency, "step away from the terminal." Sarah's heart raced as she quickly transmitted a message to the librarians. "Others have arrived. They may not understand." "Please stand by." "Dr. Chen," Matthews continued, "we've been monitoring your transmissions. This is now a matter of national security. We'll take it from here." Sarah stood her ground, her mind racing. The librarians had chosen to communicate with individuals who could understand their language, not with governments or military organizations. She knew why now. They were testing our readiness, not just as individuals, but as a species. "Director Matthews," she said carefully, "you don't understand what's at stake here. The librarians chose this method of communication for a reason. If we handle this wrong, we could lose everything." "The librarians?" Matthews raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Chen, you've been awake for over 72 hours. Perhaps you're not in the best state to make decisions about humanity's first contact with an alien species." As if in response to his words, new symbols appeared above Sarah's desk, visible to everyone in the room. The officials stepped back, some reaching for weapons that thankfully remained holstered. Sarah quickly began translating the message, her eyes widening. "We have observed your arrival," the symbols read. "Now comes the second test. Will your species choose wisdom over power? Will you listen to the one who understands? Or will you repeat the mistakes of the lost 129? Matthews stared at the shifting symbols, his expression unreadable. "What are they saying, Dr. Chen?" Sarah took a deep breath. Everything hinged on how she handled this moment. "They're giving us a choice," she said carefully, "one that 129 other species failed to make correctly. Director, please, let me explain what I've learned in the last few hours. It's more important than any national security concern." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the holographic display. The fate of human civilization might very well depend on what happened in the next few minutes. Sarah looked at the faces around her, seeing fear, curiosity, and suspicion in various measures. "You have 5 minutes," Matthews said finally. "Convince me." Sarah nodded, turning to face the assembled officials. As she began to explain what she'd learned about the true nature of the universe and the role of the librarians, she noticed new symbols forming above her desk. The librarians were watching, evaluating, judging whether humanity was truly ready for the knowledge they offered. The next few minutes would determine our species' fate. Would we choose wisdom over power, understanding over control? The answer would either elevate humanity to heights we'd only dreamed of, or add us to the long list of civilizations that weren't ready for the truth. Sarah could see the exact moment when Director Matthews began to understand the magnitude of what she was explaining. His stern expression softened, replaced by something that looked almost like wonder. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that these librarians don't just have advanced technology, they have the accumulated knowledge of 742 species across 27 galaxies." "More than that," Sarah replied, glancing at the shifting symbols above her desk. "They understand the fundamental nature of reality itself. But they won't share that knowledge with governments or military organizations. They want to ensure we're ready as a species, that we'll use what we learn wisely." One of the younger officials stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the flowing symbols. "How can we be sure they're telling the truth? This could be an elaborate deception." New symbols appeared in response, and Sarah couldn't help but smile as she translated. "They say that's exactly the kind of critical thinking they hope to see. They welcome skepticism. In fact," she paused, studying the new pattern forming, "they're offering proof." The holographic display expanded, filling the room with a 3-dimensional star map. But this wasn't just any map. It showed stellar movements across millions of years, revealing patterns that made everyone in the room catch their breath. "The universe," Sarah explained, translating the flowing symbols, "is more ordered than we ever imagined. These patterns aren't random. They're like the circuitry of a vast cosmic computer. And somewhere in these patterns is the answer to faster-than-light travel, clean energy, even immortality. But we have to earn each piece of knowledge, prove we're ready for it." Matthew studied the star map intently. "And if we try to take the knowledge by force, Then we failed the test, Sarah said simply. We joined the 129 species who weren't ready. The librarians will leave, and humanity will be left to advance on our own, knowing we missed our greatest opportunity. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The holographic display shifted again, showing new symbols that made Sarah gasp. "What is it?" Matthews asked, noting her reaction. "They're offering us a choice," Sarah translated, her voice filled with awe. "We can continue as we are, with me acting as the initial conduit for information, teaching others as they become ready to understand. Or," she paused, reading the next part carefully, "they will leave immediately, giving us time to discuss as a species and reach out when we're truly unified in our desire to learn." "How long would they wait?" one of the officials asked. Sarah relayed the question and translated the response. "They say they would return in 50 years, giving us time to prove we can overcome our divisions and act as one species rather than competing nations." Matthews paced the room slowly, his shoes clicking on the tile floor. Finally, he turned to face Sarah. "If we let you continue as the point of contact, what assurance do we have that the knowledge will be shared fairly?" New symbols appeared, and Sarah laughed softly as she translated. "They say that's another good question. They're offering to establish similar contact with individuals from every nation simultaneously, but only those who can decode their language independently, as I did. They say this ensures the knowledge spreads organically while maintaining their requirement that it must be earned." The officials huddled together, discussing in hushed tones. Sarah waited, watching the symbols above her desk shift and flow. The librarians were patient. They had seen this moment hundreds of times before with other species. But she knew we only had one chance to get it right. Finally, Matthews stepped forward. "We need to contact our superiors, but—" he held up a hand as Sarah started to protest. "We won't interfere with your communication. Continue your dialogue, Dr. Chen. Just keep us informed of any critical information." As the officials filed out of her office, Sarah turned back to her holographic interface. "Thank you for your patience," she transmitted to the librarians. Their response came with what she was learning to recognize as approval. "You handled that well, Sarah Chen of Earth. Now shall we continue with your first real lesson? We believe you're ready to learn about what your species calls dark matter. The truth will surprise you." Sarah settled back in her chair, her mind clear despite her exhaustion. As new symbols began to flow, she realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity's greatest adventure was about to unfold, and she had a front-row seat. The next few hours would redefine everything we thought we knew about physics, about reality itself. But more importantly, they would reveal whether humanity could handle the truth about our place in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than we had ever imagined. The revelation about dark matter was just the beginning. As Sarah decoded the librarian's explanation, everything she thought she knew about physics seemed to crumble away. Dark matter wasn't just invisible mass affecting gravity. It was the physical manifestation of probability itself. Your species was close to understanding, the librarians explained through their flowing symbols. Your quantum physicists glimpsed the truth when they spoke of probability waves and multiple universes. But reality is both simpler and more complex than they imagined. Sarah's fingers danced across her interface. Are you saying dark matter is connected to parallel universes? Not parallel, came the response. Potential. What you call dark matter is the physical weight of all possible futures pressing against the present moment. This is why it appears to affect gravity. It is quite literally the mass of possibility. The implications made Sarah's head spin. Then could we, theoretically, access these potential futures? New symbols appeared, carrying a warning tone. This is where many species stumble, Sarah Chen of Earth. The ability to access potential futures comes with great responsibility. Some species used this knowledge to prevent disasters. Others tried to manipulate probability for power. Which path do you think humanity would choose? Before Sarah could respond, her computer chimed with an urgent message. Similar communications had been established in research facilities across the globe. Just as the librarians had promised, other linguists and scientists had begun decoding their language independently. It's happening faster than we expected, Sarah transmitted. How many others are you speaking with now? 47 individuals across your planet have achieved basic comprehension, the librarians responded. Another 112 are close. This is a good sign. Your species learns quickly. A new message flashed on Sarah's screen. A linguist in Beijing had just made the same breakthrough about dark matter. Similar reports were coming in from Moscow, London, Cairo, and Sydney. Humanity was beginning to understand, not as separate nations, but as one species. There is something else you should know. The librarian's symbols shifted into a new pattern. We are not just observers or teachers. We are also students. Each species we contact adds their own unique perspective to our library. What do you think humanity has to offer? Sarah thought carefully before responding. Our stories, she transmitted finally. Our ability to imagine possibilities and then work to make them real. Our capacity to find hope even in darkness. Yes, the symbols danced with what seemed like joy. This is why we came. Your species has a unique gift for narrative, for finding meaning in the chaos of existence. We believe this gift will be crucial in the coming cycles. Cycles? Sarah asked. But before the librarians could respond, she noticed something strange. The symbols were forming patterns she hadn't seen before, more complex and somehow more urgent. Sarah Chen of Earth, they transmitted. We must now share something few species learn this early in their development. The universe is approaching another reset point. This is part of why we sought contact now. Humanity's gift for storytelling, for imagining new possibilities, may be essential for what comes next. Sarah's heart raced as she decoded their next message. The truth about the universe's cycles, about the role of consciousness in shaping reality itself, about humanity's potential place in the grand design of existence. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. As the sun rose outside her windowless office, casting new light on a world that would never be the same, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity stood on the brink of its greatest adventure, not just as explorers or scientists, but as contributors to the greatest collection of knowledge in 27 galaxies. The librarians had one final message for her that morning. The future is not written, Sarah Chen of Earth. It is imagined, shaped by the stories we tell and the choices we make. Your species has already imagined many possible futures. Now you must choose which ones to make real. Sarah looked at her reflection in the computer screen, seeing the fatigue and wonder in her eyes. The first human to truly communicate with an alien species, but certainly not the last. Across the globe, others were beginning their own conversations with the librarians, each adding their unique perspective to humanity's greatest dialogue. The universe, it seemed, was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. And humanity, with all our flaws and dreams, our stories and struggles, might just have an important role to play in its next chapter. As she prepared to transmit her next question to the librarians, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Whatever came next, one thing was certain: the greatest story in human history was just beginning. If you enjoyed this tale of first contact and cosmic discovery, don't forget to like and subscribe for more science fiction stories that explore the boundless possibilities of our universe.